Good evening, friends. We start tonight with another missile launch coming out of North Korea. The launch is the country's first since September. The missile traveled over 600 miles and struck the ocean within Japan's exclusive economic zone. Secretary of Defense James Mattis spoke about the launch this afternoon.
A little over 2.5 hours ago, North Korea launched an intercontinental ballistic missile. It went higher, frankly, than any previous shot they've taken. It's a research and development effort on their part to continue building ballistic missiles that could threaten everywhere in the world, basically.
The United States and South Korea are preparing for major war games on the border with North Korea. Meanwhile, the South Korean government is hosting the Russian Valdai Club to discuss a diplomatic solution. Manila Chan has been following this story today, and she joins us with more on this. So there is at least a plan on the table from Russia.
Well, there's an idea, Ed. And what timing for North Korea to launch yet another missile test on the heels of the South hosting this 8th annual Asian conference of the Valdai Discussion Club aimed at bringing peace to the whole peninsula. Now, experts from Russia, South Korea, China, Singapore, Japan, India, Australia, and the United States have gathered in Seoul for this two-day conference. After the first session of the conference, Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Igor Murgalov proposed his country's roadmap for peace in the region by introducing these three stages. The first involves a double freeze, meaning in order to tamp down the tensions, North Korea must stop all nuclear and missile tests, and conversely, the U.S. must stop all war games conducted with Asian allies, especially those in the South. Next, direct talks must be brokered between Pyongyang and Washington in order to establish rules of conduct. And third, all parties involved in the region must establish a security framework going forward. Now, RT was in South Korea for the conference and caught up with an advisor to the South Korean president, Moon Jae-in. Listen to what he had to say first about their neighbor's behavior in spite of President Trump keeping the military option on the table.
North Korea knew that the military option is always on the table. Therefore, by putting the military option on the table, it's not likely changing North Korean behavior.
But the advisor's desire for a peaceful end to the tensions were more in line with what the Russian diplomats had to say.
I personally favor engagement, dialogue, and negotiation with North Korea. And some people in the government may have different ideas.
The Russian deputy foreign minister also said that if further sanctions are placed on North Korea, it could result in a humanitarian crisis in the Asian country. Meanwhile, U.S. and South Korean officials have decided to at least temporarily suspend upcoming war games slated for early 2018, since South Korea will be hosting the Winter Olympics and the Paralympics, citing they did not want to provoke Kim Jong-un. So for now, there is no simple solution to getting North Korea to the bargaining table, especially since it doesn't appear that they will cease their nuclear ambitions anytime soon.
Thanks, Manila. For more on this, let's turn to former U.S. diplomat Jim Jatras. Jim, good to have you with us tonight.
Thanks, Ed. Good to be here.
Lindsey Graham said in an interview tonight that the United States isn't going to live this way, that now that there's pretty good, credible evidence that North Korea could hit the United States mainland. And he says that China has to realize that we're not going to live like this. I just feel like we're closer to military action than we've ever been. And he also said that North Korea has to realize that that they will get hit by the President of the United States if he has to make a choice, no matter how many people are killed. I mean, this is unbelievable. Your thoughts on where we are after this launch today?
Absolutely right, Ed. You know, that three-stage approach from Valdai, the first stage, the first element, which is essentially the double freeze, the same thing the Chinese have been saying all along. I think the Chinese are fully aware that the Americans are not going to accept a capability, a delivery capability of a nuclear weapon in the United States. But what the Americans don't seem to want to understand is that the North Koreans are not going to give up their nuclear weapons. It's as simple as that. So to try to get out of this, instead of just making threats, we do need some kind of an initial freeze. And frankly, I think at least unilaterally, that's more or less what we had seen out of the North Koreans over the past few weeks until their launch today. But what did we see from the American side? More exercises, more threats. No indication of any kind of back off.
The UN Security Council is going to meet, and they're talking about a naval blockade. And I believe that we have talked about that as being the next step in the past. That could lead to a confrontation on the high seas. Would it be effective? How do you think that would North Korea would respond to that?
A blockade to do what? Are they going to take off?
To keep commerce from coming in and out of
food,
North
things
Korea.
that North Korea needs to survive. You know, as was mentioned in the news piece, are they trying to cause a famine or an economic collapse in North Korea? Are they trying to push Kim to the brink of desperation where he does do something that is irrevocable? Again, I don't know what if they can find some way that maybe would cripple his missile or nuclear program by some kind of a blockade, maybe that would make some kind of sense, but I don't really see that this is going to do that.
The launches that have been taking place by North Korea, they're fueled. They have to be fueled. Yeah. So they're going to be in sight and on the pad for several hours before they're launched. Would it be the next step to take out a missile before it's launched? And a strategic strike where maybe people wouldn't be killed, and not in the masses anyway? Would that be a possibility by the United States? I mean, when we say all military options are on the table, it would seem to me that that would be one of them.
I think it would be a real dangerous roll of the dice to do that, because from the North Korean side, if they see that kind of launch, they don't know what it is that we're going to hit. Is it hitting a missile on the launch pad, or is it a decapitation strike aimed at Kim and the people running his administration? Do they then push their own button to do something that's really, really horrible to South Korea that could kill hundreds of thousands of people, maybe millions?
Russia is the only country that's come forward through their, consultations that this is what needs to happen. No one else has done that. Not even the United States. There hasn't even been a bar that North Korea has to reach. Or am I wrong on that?
No, exactly. And even when, during his trip to Asia, when Trump was sounding more conciliatory, come to the table, let's make a deal, there doesn't seem to be any awareness on the U.S. side. What are the possible contours of the deal? You can't simply just threaten him and say, now surrender your weapons and risk ending up like Saddam Hussein or Muammar Gaddafi.
Is there a significance to this most recent launch today from the standpoint of its distance, how high it went up, 2,800 miles? Also the fact that it was in the air for 50 minutes, and also the fact that it happened in the middle of the night, their time.
Sure, absolutely. And I think what we're really doing here, Ed, is we are creating a danger to the American people, to the American homeland, by not trying to think outside the box. Look, I heard one of the officials today say that Kim can shoot his missiles to any place on the planet now. I think Matt has said that.
Yes, he did.
You notice he's not threatening anybody else on the planet except us. Because is France in his face? Is Britain in his face? Is South Africa in his face? No, we're in his face. So the question is, how do we disengage where we are the target?
Jim Jatras, always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us tonight.